This is Halo Infinite. We're here on Xbox Series X taking a look at the next chapter in the Master Chief's story, where he finds himself on this brand new installation having to deal with the most dangerous threat he's ever come across, the Banished. So I was able to take a look at the game running on the Series X and actually have a full-scale scope look at what this has to offer. So the gameplay you'll be seeing here is a preview setup, but of the full final build of the game. That means it will be taken from the first 4 levels in specific segments that I was allowed to showcase with specific cutscenes that were allowed to be presented. It shouldn't really be spoilerish to any degree, at least from what I've played outside of the context of what is being shown. That shouldn't be a problem. And I do imagine I will have another more open world type look at the game as well that focuses on that aspect of the experience. So yeah, what we're getting here is a dynamic 4K resolution at 60 FPS with HDR support. And for the most part, yeah, it actually looks really good. It plays like a traditional Halo experience, except you can basically use the grappling hook to skip all kinds of things. Yep, you will see a lot of that in the gameplay, as I am whipping over the environment and grappling by most of my foes. It's a helpful tool, and I take full advantage of it, as you'll be seeing. And like I said, just a bunch of randomly thrown together clips of my experience, and I hope it showcases generally just what this game's like. And oh, what is this? It's the battle rifle. That's right, I was like, oh yeah. And then kind of kick it into overdrive as I battle this array of creatures. So like I was mentioning, you are battling against the Banished, a powerful new force that is basically the Covenant, but they're red color schemed instead of purple. They're the same thing, and there's a lot more brutes within the density. But yeah, this is your traditional Halo type of experience. You're moving through what are largely more linear type scenarios and then going out into semi-open world environments. The core free roaming sections of this one really do feel like somewhat of an open world, maybe like a Fable hub type of open world, where you do get freedom to go out and do various activities. I wasn't necessarily huge on going to doing that type of thing because I wanted to dig into the story, but if you want to go and freeze some people and do some other things, you know, that's totally available to you and ready to go. And yeah, it's generally just a very neat sort of game. It very much is traditional Halo, but they've tried to do a number of new things with it, and I think that will very likely please a number of existing fans and be something that is more accessible for the newer audience. Now, that being said, story-wise, I do think this one does heavily lean on past Halo knowledge, but not specific Halo knowledge, if that makes sense. Like, I do think somebody coming into the Halo franchise for the first time can get into what's happening. At the same time, I do feel that you might kind of also be a bit like, huh, what's going on here? Same with if you're into Halo and you haven't really paid attention to the extended media, you might find yourself a little bit lost in regards to who the characters are and what exactly their places are. So you can come in here, and as long as you don't need to know that knowledge, I think it kind of sets the stage. It's like, oh, there's a bad guy, there's a new group of people we're taking out, Master Chief's here, he's got a new assistant, and that's the gist of it. So you can accept it in that regard and kind of go through really easily. But if you really want to know the characters surrounding this individual, you do perhaps need to have some additional knowledge of the universe prior to, as I was also kind of like, huh, who are these people? But yeah, like I had said, you can jump into this kind of fresh, and I think you can understand what's going on and getting the gist of everything that's happening. But if you have read and looked into the other media that exists out there that expands the universe, you will appreciate the story a little bit more and have more of an understanding of the stakes within the context of the 4 missions at the beginning of the game that we're talking about here, and the specific cutscenes that we are allowed to mention. Because it's Atriox's crew, the Banished, and, you know, again, red color scheme, not purple. same kind of creatures, characters, everything like that. So yeah, this was a very interesting experience. I definitely had some fun playing it. It was kind of about what I had anticipated and expected for this one, in that you're kind of just moving through the open world to get to either your missions or the other places you want to go to, and you just kind of set waypoints and head over there. It almost feels like a little bit of, I want to say, Far Cry, in terms of there's lots of busy work you can do if you want to do it. And you see that kind of reflected in a number of other scenarios. So in the past Halo campaigns, you're typically able to, if you're smart, skip segments and whatnot. And I think that's going to be a little harder to do here, because there are many segments where it's like, kill all of the enemies in this area before you can click this thing. Or, hey Chief, we need to get a power supply. Go find one of these random power boxes out in the world and plug it into a machine so that we can open this door. That was coming up a couple times, and that was intriguing. But I think the story I was really into. You know, I was definitely getting the old sort of emotion and feeling that I had gotten in other Halo titles, in the way that they use the traditional music that definitely evokes a lot of nostalgia, which, you know, is something that I would expect when they are playing around with the traditional themes of the older Halo games when it comes to the music, but also the sounds of other things in the game. The shields recharging, the sounds of the different weapons, the pops. And they're a little more fun and weird with the weapons out there. You'll notice a lot of times I kind of stop because I'm noticing some sort of explosive thing spinning around, because that'll likely kill you. It's actually killed me a couple times, seeing an explosive thing kind of move in a different way. And I think that adds a nice little bit of randomness to the play, as you kind of have to figure out, hey, should I keep pushing through, or uh-oh, is that thing going to blow up and send me flying off into the distance? Everything seems quite logical. The main story levels do feel very linear in terms of their design. It's just you get to these points where it's like, hey, you can go do all this. I was actually really... I froze for a second initially when it started popping up all this stuff on my screen. I was just like, this feels weird, I don't know what I'm doing. Because, you know, in other Halo games, I'm used to the story just kind of going bop, 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 bop. Whereas this one, I think, gives you a lot more freedom to do something else. They're kind of hitting that angle where it's like, hey, you can progress to that story right away, like we're doing here with this tower mission. Or you can go off and do some other kind of thing. You know, there's people that need saving, and the Chief needs to be a hero and all that, which is kind of neat. So yeah, definitely like the grappling hook a lot more than I necessarily thought I would. But it also allows you to just kind of move through the environment so swiftly that I was kind of jumping through portions of the campaign quite easily, because I would just be like, oh, enemies in this room, and I would just do like an Indiana Jones grapple to the ceiling and kind of swing by them all, which I thought was kind of comical. But I mean, that's the design of it too, is it's a new toy within the sandbox for you to play with, and I think it's actually quite a lot of fun. So I enjoyed what I played out of Halo Infinite. I think it was kind of an interesting sort of start to the full scope of the experience, because we are talking about it in the context of these initial missions. So I think that's quite neat. Obviously, I'll be doing a full review of the game in the future, so stay tuned for whenever that is. But yeah, for now, I'm very intrigued. It left me with a sense of kind of wonder and sort of curiosity in regards to where they're going with the story. I think the weapon, the Cortana 2.0, she's sassy, fun, little weird, over-the-top quirky, love it. She works quite well as a fool to Master Chief. I also like his pilot friend there that drives around your, Pelican and whatnot. I thought that was kind of entertaining. And then, of course, there's a lot of more dynamics to the actual other characters in the game. You know, they're all speaking very good English, all of the Banished, which is kind of great of them to adapt our language and that, so that we can understand them perfectly. So that's always intriguing. They have funny things to say, or actually interesting little dialogue things to say here or there. There's great action. The cinematics look gorgeous in this game. The cinematics are actually just beautiful. And again, the use of music and styling to the cinematics, I think, are absolutely fantastic. And I think they did a really good job kind of integrating cinematics with regular gameplay, which is actually something 343 has done well in the previous Halo titles as well. You look at those ones, they actually do a really good job of merging regular gameplay in a Halo title with the cinematic portions that you deal with. And then there's like a little sense of some of these buildings might be a little bit more dungeon crawling-esque, like the Red Tower building I thought was really neat in that it was like, oh, a little bit of a little mini dungeon almost. Oh, and then there's these boss fight segments where you kind of take on these various enemies, and you just, I don't know, they're just quick little things. You kill them. They do like some kind of, oh, haha, Master Chief, this is as far as you go. You know who I am? Haha. I know who you are. And the Master Chief's like, just whatever, and you just kind of kill them. So it's just like a little bit more of a spongy enemy, and it's like a quick little duel, and they have their moment to shine, and then, you know, they're gone, and you're on to the next one. So I think people will find that maybe the boss battles are a little bit more interactive. I've always found that to be a bit of a semi-awkward thing in the Halo games. I know a lot of people aren't huge on the existing boss fights that have come up in past Halo titles. I always thought they were fine because the games weren't necessarily about that sort of thing. So maybe they found a decent middle ground here for those little boss scenarios. I kind of find them a little insignificant at times. You just kind of kill them and you move on. But there's still a neat sort of thing that also builds the lore of the world, being like, oh, this person did this and this and that, and that's why they're a big deal, and why they're a big deal for Master Chief to kill. So that's intriguing. Anyways, I think the weapons are fun to use. We seem to have a decent selection of vehicles to play around with within the sandbox, so that's kind of fun. And I think overall I'm, again, very intrigued and curious to see what the full scope of this is going to be like. I do think that the linear levels, in terms of their design, the visuals are fairly impressive, and they also look very much like a traditional Halo setup in regards to the flow of them. The scale of them does feel a lot bigger. You get those action moments. When it comes to the open world, I was a little less impressed by the visuals of that open world. They didn't, like, you know, the pop-in and stuff was decently handled, but it kind of looked a little, I don't know how to really describe it. It was a little, it was large in scale, but a bit murkier and definitely not as in-depth in terms of the detail and the texturing as the linear areas were, which is, I guess, to be expected. It definitely has a different visual aesthetic to it that doesn't really scream next-gen to me, as I was sort of hoping for this one. And I think that's very intriguing, that they're either going to have created something open world-wise that people are really going to love. And I know everyone's going to be like, oh, it's not open world, but it very much is a larger hub-type area that you can visit, that I would compare to like the Fable games where they have like open world hub sections that you kind of visit. That's sort of what they have going on here, and you can use that as a way to either, you know, get to your next destination, or you can play around in. So that is Halo Infinite. It is kind of a neat next chapter. They're definitely trying to do some things that are new while also pleasing existing fans, and I'm going to be very intrigued and just curious to see what people think of this game in general, the general populace, in regards to what this game has to offer. As I'm not sure if it's necessarily a perfect continuation of what we've seen in the past, but perhaps the start of a great new direction that will change how we play the Halo games going forward. And I'm just really optimistic about things. I would say I think most are going to respond to this in a very excited way, and I think they're going to find it to be quite a lot of fun, and they're going to have new activities to do, as it does seem like the maps are chock full of like little audio logs, side activities, things you can find, little things where you could be saving the day as the Master Chief in different scenarios. You know, I think that will be something that will speak to a new audience. And it will also be curious to see what the more veteran like Halo players think story-wise of what this has to do in comparison to the games that came prior. So yeah, I think overall I had positive thoughts on this one. I think it was good. I think it was fun. There were many moments where I was like, this is Halo. This is how Halo is supposed to feel. And there were other moments where I'm like, this is a bit different. This is something that I'm going to have to adjust to and get used to. Especially, again, I was having this huge shock when I first entered, like, that spot where you're like, oh, you could do all kinds of stuff, and I was just like, huh, okay, where am I specifically going to continue the story? Because I'm very much into the linear elements of the Halo games. I like a story that's really quickened to me, and everything nowadays really embraces more open kind of scoped things. So yeah, I think they do a decent balance of, hey, you can do just what you want to, or hey, you know, get out there, peek around, see what kinds of things you can find, and hopefully have some fun with it. But the sandbox seems fun to play in. It seems expansive. It seems like they are trying to tell an emotionally charged Halo story, and they do that by dropping you just kind of right suddenly into, you know, the aftermath of a situation. I think that's kind of fun, and I can't wait for everyone to see the full scope of Halo Infinite. And again, you know, stay tuned for my full review of the game, where I will chat in depth about all elements of what this experience has to offer. And of course, you know, more content in regards to the multiplayer and other stuff, and I do believe a follow-up kind of looking a little bit more in-depth at the open world elements of this game. For now, just enjoy a little bit more gameplay and an ending cinematic that is a little bit fun and a little bit of a throwback to a more traditional time in the Halo universe.
Things. This is Forerunner, right? I've heard the stories, but man, this is crazier than I imagined. Dumb question. How do you know this isn't a trap?
I don't.
Great. I hope this weapon of yours is worth the risk. I'm reading multiple enemy ships heading this way. Too many. We're running out.
It's been 6 months. Where have you been?
What happened? Where is Cortana? Is out.
Yes, it is. Maybe there's a way to power it back up nearby. They'll pair you with another AI. They'll pair you with another AI. Maybe even another Cortana model if Halsey lets them. It won't be me. It won't be me. You know that. Right?
Is it safe?
I think so. Yes. It's safe. This is part of me. I don't know why. I don't know how, but it is me. It was the last part I remember being deleted. Let me just... You are here because you were chosen. Our enemies are getting smarter and more numerous every day. What I am about to show you will help turn the tide of war. I have been working to harness the strategic power of a shipborne AI onto the battlefield. Are you ready?
Yes, Dr. Halsey.
Unlike previous AI models, she will reside between your mind and the suit, directly communicating with your neural interface. Think of her as a new set of eyes to aid your reactions and upgrade your reconnaissance. She's not the driver, but a way to level the playing field.
What do I call her?
Ask her. She named herself.
Hello, Master Chief. I'm Cortana.
Together you become our newfound hope. Together, you become our key to humanity's survival. She will do anything necessary to make sure that your mission is accomplished, even if that means sacrificing herself, or you, to accomplish it.
What happened? I touched it and...
Was that real?